Hi, today I am giving a review of this little book, What is the Story of the Wizard of Oz, by Kirsten Anderson. If you have watched my channel before, you may know that I read a lot of these Who Was books, but they're not always Who Was or Who Is. Sometimes it'll be What Was, What Is, things like that. In this case, there was one about the story of the Wizard of Oz, so I thought I would want to read this, as I read a lot of these books. I'm basically just going to say what it goes over and my thoughts on it. All these books are only around 100 pages. I think they've got kind of a limit to how long they can be, so they really can't put a whole lot in them, but I still feel that I learn a lot from reading them. So I like the movie, The Wizard of Oz. Of course, I'm talking about the 1939 film. I had it on VHS tape as a kid, and I've seen it many times, and I've liked it since I was quite young. I've not yet seen any versions of Wicked. I know that's been really popular, especially with the movies. I plan on watching the movies at some point, have not yet gotten to them. I don't watch a lot of movies, but I do like them. I just haven't watched any in a while. So I did already know the story of the Wizard of Oz, but I was just interested in seeing what this book would say. Maybe it would give me some details I didn't know about the creation of it and its legacy since then, which is pretty much what this is. But because it is a kid's biography, it's not going to be super long or in-depth. So if you want a really long biography about the story of the Wizard of Oz, this probably is not the place to go unless you just want to get your hands on everything you can that's related to it. But if you're like me and don't mind reading this little book to learn a little, then you could do that. Or like if you know someone who's like a child and you think that they might like this, I'm telling you some information on what it's about. So I'll say what this book goes over. It starts with the author of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, L. Frank Baum. It talks about him and talks about his life, talks about the books he wrote and the inspirations for some of the things in them. We're quite familiar with the original book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. This is my copy. My copy actually has a number 1 on the side, and I really do appreciate it when books in a series have numbers on the side. I first read The Wonderful Wizard of Oz when I was in 5th grade in a copy from my teacher's little library she had in her classroom. Very nice addition to the classroom. Then of course we had the regular public school library as well that I visited often. And I got this book when I was maybe in 9th grade from Books A Million, and so I think I've read the story just twice. And I know that there are other books in the series, but I forget about their existence sometimes. I've never read any of them and I don't plan on reading any of them, but who knows what can happen in the future. If you read any of the others, I'd love to hear your thoughts on them. So I feel like most people are just familiar with this first book that inspired the movie. Back to this book. It goes over some of the movies that L. Frank Baum made with the studio that he started that were based on the world of Oz that he had created, but those movies failed. I don't think I knew about those. I didn't know about the very first adaptations because I know the 1939 film wasn't the very first adaptation they made of the book. I know that there have been many, and this book doesn't go over every single one of them, just some of the most notable ones. The book goes over the new historian of Oz. That was the title she was given to a woman who kept writing books for the series after the original author had passed away. Something I really like about these books is that they don't just teach about the main subject of the book, they also teach you a lot more things about history. So they'll have little sections where they talk more about some things. Like in this one, there was a section talking about how old movies used to work when it came to sound and how there could be live orchestra players and things like that. And then of course it does go over the making of the 1939 movie and some of the issues that occurred during that. It talks about how some of the special effects were done. I thought that was interesting. Yeah, you may just be interested in picking this up, especially if your library has it, which was the case for me. I wouldn't have gone out of my way to buy this book, but my library has a lot of the Who Was books, so I just get them, and your library might have them as well because they're very popular. This book says some of the differences between the book and the movie. It also goes a little into how the movie being played on television led to its popularity, because from my understanding, it was not super popular right away, but after a few decades, once television became normal for American families, then the movie became more popular. It also talks about the Wiz play and movie. I've never seen that, but I am familiar with it. It goes over the story of Wicked and it becoming a play. Now this book was published in 2019, so it does not go over the new Wicked movies, but because I have not yet seen anything related to it, I'm familiar with at least one of the songs. I didn't really know the story of Wicked, so it was interesting and it made me more interested in eventually watching those. The book goes over Oz's legacy and impact today. One of the ways it talks about that is talking about some of the items that were sold and auctioned and how much they sold for. I enjoyed the author's interpretation of some of the messages of the story of the Wizard of Oz. Overall, I enjoyed this. It just wasn't very long, but I've read many of the books in this series before, so I knew what to expect with it. I learned a lot of things I didn't know before, and it was enjoyable. These books are very educational and informative, and even though they're small, I think they still say a lot, and they've got a lot of nice illustrations to go along with it, and usually I really enjoy them. So this one was pretty good as well. I think that's all I have to say about this little book. I just wanted to make a video talking about it. Thank you for watching.